70 years old. It's certainly
There are other tax exemptions for that if it works out with her once she files.
Oh, yeah, you're in.
We're going to start our regular voting meeting. Let's start with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first thing.
We're down to the minutes.
Okay. What we're going to do before we start is, when's the first time I can do the student report? Or general comment?
We'll do minutes and then.
Okay. All right. So the first item is to approval of the minutes for the March 22nd. Can I have a motion to approve minutes to the March 8th, 2018 minute?
So moved.
Mr. Anderson? Ms. Mitchell? Okay. All in favor? Say aye. All opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. To go a little bit out of order, because our student representative apparently has 3 exams tomorrow. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, and we have Lauren Caseman.
Hi.
Hi, tell us what you got for us.
My name is Lauren Caseman. I'm a senior at the high school. So I wanted to thank you on behalf of all the students at this school for allowing us to partake in the student walkout last Wednesday. We had the opportunity to, you were able to volunteer whether or not you wanted to participate in the walkout. It was a memorial for the 17 victims of the Parkland shooting, and it was basically student run. It was a group of students who got together after school who were concerned about school safety and wanted some way to memorialize the students, and with the help of several teachers and Dr. Harner and the board, we were able to have a very safe memorial, and people were able to choose whether or not they wanted to do it, and I thought it was a really great thing for our school to partake in. For choir news, since that's basically all I do, we have our choir trip coming up this week. We're leaving on Saturday, and we're coming back Friday. We're going to North Carolina, Georgia, and South Carolina, and we're going to be singing at a bunch of different venues and churches and such. And also at the same time, there are language trips going on. The Spanish students are going to Peru and Ecuador, and Mandarin students are going to China. So that would be really cool. We also have people working on Minithon. The Minithon committee is working really hard. We have our Minithon coming up on April 21st. So we're working really hard for that. It's going to be a 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. event, and we're hoping to get a lot more people than we had in the past couple of years. I won't be able to be there because I'll be at All-State Choir with 6 of my other peers, which is a new record for our school. And then other than that, we're just beginning preparation for finals and AP exams, which are coming faster than a lot of us realize. So we're getting a lot of schedules from teachers about the whole end of the year, what's going on for seniors, juniors, and how they're going to prepare us for the exams, who's taking the final, and whatnot. Yeah, thank you.
That's terrific. Thank you. What are your exams in tomorrow? What are the exams in tomorrow?
Exams tomorrow?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I guess it's not a secret what you're going to study in college. Yeah. All right, get out of here. Go study. There you go. I have to apologize to the audience if I'm a little mumbly tonight. I had a root canal 4 hours ago, and I don't know. My wife thinks I deserved it. All right. So next item, we're going to move to general public comment. I believe we have 5 people signed up. Ms. Bishop.
Rick Orloff.
Okay, Mr. Orloff wants to go last. Okay, next.
Kimberly Gold.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Gall. I'm a resident of Haycock Township for the past 21 years. I'm also an employee of QCSD for the past 16 years as a nurse at Neidig Elementary. I am here tonight as an advocate for students and staff as their healthcare professional and to fight for our nurse that will be furloughed. My question to everyone is, what is a school nurse's responsibility and role in the school district? Your immediate answer may be is that we take care of ill and injured children, and you are correct. But this is only a fraction of what we do. We work tirelessly each day to keep children in school and in class. What we do is not measurable on a scale or graph. How do you measure the value of compassion and caring for another human being? How do you measure giving emotional support to students and parents? How do you measure the time spent investigating and informing the community resources for a wide variety of issues? How do you measure setting up schedules for treatments, medications, and visits requiring nursing intervention without interfering or diminishing academic time? How do you measure finding coverage so a building does not go without a nurse? How do you measure the quality of time for our 3 private schools, 5 elementary schools, soon to be 4, the 6th grade center, Strayer Middle School, and high school required and are entitled to of our nursing services? What is measurable is the number of visits we see each day, the number of medications we administer, the number of sick students and staff we send home. We are required by the state to do vision screening for every single student from kindergarten to 12th grade, to complete hearing screenings. Any failures of these screenings we refer to private and/or community services to provide for correction, to complete height and weight screenings, to make sure immunizations are compliant, and insist in getting students into compliance, to have physical and dental examinations completed, and to provide in-school free examinations for those who can't afford a physician or dental visit. We compile health information on each student provided by parents and guardians and primary care providers. We input all this information along with medication students may receive during the school day into our healthcare system of SNAP, all by ourselves, each nurse in our individual schools, all in between visits and communication with parents and staff. The 12 nurses in the district are overwhelmed now, and we are to be reduced in numbers by furloughing a nurse. The student census is not changing. The health issues are not decreasing. I have 400 students, 50 staff members, and any number of visits coming to my school each day. I am their healthcare professional. I am the only nurse in the building. I have no one to cover for me for lunch or break. Putting a sign on my door stating I'll be at lunch or break is quickly removed for any student, staff, or visitor that is in need of healthcare assistance. I am stressing now what next year will bring with more students after the closing of Tehican Valley. I am concerned about overcrowding in the classrooms. That is occurring now and more so in the next few years until Neidig reconstruction is complete. Even after the reconstruction is completed at Neidig, the student body count may well be over 600 students. I cannot do all that is required by me by myself. I'm exhausted now with 400 students. Each day I pray on my way to school that I'll be given the strength to triage each situation that comes my way, to communicate with students, staff, and parents, to complete what the state requires of me in a timely manner, and to go home feeling that job was well done. In reality, I go home exhausted, unable to turn off my brain and start a working list of what needs to be accomplished the next day. The next day is getting harder and harder to face with increase in number of visits, increase in number of changing and challenging health conditions, both physical and emotional, and an increase in community issues that affect our students' mental and physical well-being. Are you willing to downsize needed healthcare professionals in the district for the savings of money over the protection of your students, staff, and community healthcare needs? I hope not. Thank you.
Kevin Kelly.
Hello, my name is Kevin Kelly. I'm a school psychologist here in Quakertown. I also have a night job. I work at Lehigh University as an adjunct professor. One of the courses I teach is called Crisis Management in Schools. I think it's a relevant topic tonight. You know, a big part of what we talk about in our course, and I'm actually talking about this on Saturday. We're having a colloquium on crisis management up at Lehigh at Mountain Top Campus, 9 o'clock. Little plug there. But a big part of what we're talking about, both on Saturday and in our course, is crisis prevention. Because school crisis management is much more than just about security. You know, it's much more than just about locked doors. It's much more than just ALICE trainings. It's much more than school resource officers. It's about prevention. I think we should put all our, or most of our eggs in school crisis prevention in that basket. Okay. Research backs this up. You know, there's a school counselor that's on the agenda to be furloughed. And a school counselor prevents crises from happening to begin with. They're involved in social and emotional learning in school. They see at-risk kids. They run social skills groups for kids. They see kids individually for counseling. They see kids in groups. They hook families up with resources in the community, mental health resources. And they're about prevention and not putting out fires, okay? And a school counselor is probably one of the most important pieces of crisis prevention that we have. And in these times, I don't think it's appropriate or the best use of our resources to be furloughing a school counselor. I agree with Kim about nurses, too. They're part of our crisis management team in terms of prevention. And also with prevention is class sizes. You know, getting to know kids, getting to know families, you know, putting out situations that may become a problem early on before they become big problems is what education's about, it's what teaching's about. It's what we're in the business for. It affects school achievement as well. So, you know, if we're furloughing 4 teachers and we're losing 7 others too, because we're not replacing the teachers that are retiring as well, that's going to have effect on crisis management as well, in my opinion. So I think we don't need less counselors, we need more. We are already, the American Counseling Association recommends 250 to 1 ratio. We're not even there now, so we'll be less there. We have virtually the same number of students as next year, so we're going to be dealing with the same number of student difficulties. So that's going to be important too. So I really feel, you know, please, schools are more than just school achievement, although it's a big part of it, but it's also about social emotional learning. And school teachers, school counselors, all the people that are on your agenda that you want to furlough are worth it. They're worth the money. And the best bang for your buck is to get school prevention rather than put out fires. So, thank you.
Kylie Williams.
If I...
Hi, I'm Charlie Williams, and I'm from Chimborazo. Dear School Board, I am writing this letter in regards to our school counselor, Miss Gordon. I am a proud student at Chimborazo Elementary School. In 2nd grade, we learned about community service leaders and CPR and how one person can make a difference. Miss Gordon has made a difference by anti-bullying. Also, she takes a lot of time out of the day to eat lunch with students. Miss Gordon has made a difference at Chum, and please don't take her away from us. Thank you for your time. Shiley Williams.
Shannon Herman.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for listening to me. My name is Shannon Herman. I am a parent of 2 elementary kids at Trumbowersville. This is my daughter, Tegan. She is in 4th grade, and my son, Nate, is in 5th grade. And I was going to come up here and read Tegan's letter, but I'll leave that for you since Shiley did such a great job from the student perspective. I'd like to give you the parent perspective on the furloughs that you're proposing. As Nurse Gall had mentioned, the nursing staff is critical to the parents. I will tell you that I am a professional. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in, believe it or not, elementary education. And I knew back then I was not dedicated nor committed enough to follow through. So I did what all people with elementary ed degrees do. I went into health insurance, and that's now what I sell. But so I do have an understanding, minimal, at what every teacher faces and the workload that you all volunteer for and that's put upon each teacher, each nurse, and each counselor, and how critical they are to the parent. So I like to think that I'm somewhat informed. I'm a professional. I know what's going on in the world. I watch the news every now and again, not too much because who could deal with that all the time, but I do know what's going on in the world, and I can tell you without a doubt that the counselors, as Kevin had mentioned, are critical. I have, like I said, my 4th grade daughter here is coming home with problems that I'm like, are you kidding me? And you know who's handling those? Her guidance counselor, Laura Gordon. She is making these she's making the kids know that they're important. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to do it at home, but let's be honest. I have 2 kids, and I'm working full-time, and I come home, and I will listen to their problems for sure, and I absolutely advocate for parental support, but I can't be in that classroom. I can't be there when the crisis hits, and though as an adult, I may say, are you kidding me? Like, this is what's making us come home crying every day, because it's 4th grade girl drama. It's nothing too terrible that they won't conquer, but it's also the foundation of what's to come later. And as we've all seen in the news, when there's not that support, even at an early age, that's when these problems start. And as Kevin said, we need to prevent it. As from the nursing perspective, again, somewhat professional. I sell health insurance, right? I should know about some of these things. I deal with claims all day long. But I can tell you, I got to get to work. And I don't know when my kid is really sick because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a professional. I'm not a nurse. I don't know when they're faking. And I am always going to lean to that side that they're faking, right? But there have been several times where it's been because of our nurse that I have actually said, you know, maybe we do need to go to the doctor. You're not faking. And the one time we actually found out my son had influenza B, which I immediately pulled him out of school, which was great because then it stopped the spread of it. And as for the teachers that you're considering to furlough, please bear in mind that class size does make a difference. It does matter. And our teachers are already overworked, as you well know. I know you're not ignorant to these facts, but it matters and it makes a difference to the parents, to the students. So thank you for listening to me. I appreciate your time.
Clint Rickard.
Here we go.
Good evening, everyone. I know you haven't seen me for a little while because it's not TSA based this time. I'd like to speak on behalf of Miss Gordon. Everybody knows that I have been in this district for a very long time. And in being in this district for a very long time, I've seen not the best part of the district, I would like to admit. I know that we've grown a lot, but this district has a lot of people that have issues with acceptance. I know this because I went through the district, and I know this because I got jumped almost every single day at POF because I was the big farm boy. And everybody wanted to find out how the big farm boy, how strong he really was. And there was 2, and then there was 3, and then there was 4 and 5, and it ended up at 15. I don't know what my guidance counselor name was because they didn't handle it. I remember I was in Dr. Fetterman's office all the time because I was always fighting. And then finally it took my father to figure out who exactly all these kids were, called up each of their houses and said, If they really want to fight Clint, we'll do it in the front yard one at a time. Maybe if I would have had a guidance counselor, I wouldn't have to tell that story. Or if I had a guidance counselor that cared enough about me, like Miss Gordon cares about the children at Trum, then that wouldn't be a story that I need to tell. She knows every single one of their names. She goes into every one of their classes. She finds out what makes them tick, and she makes them tick a little faster and a little better and learn a little more. All right, I've seen lots of different guidance counselors, and she is one of the best I've ever seen. To furlough her would be a travesty. The children of Trum would be devastated. And to be quite honest, the children that are coming in from Tehickan Valley kind of deserve to have their guidance counselor help them transition as well. I kind of believe that that person could do halftime between POF and Trumbarsville to help those Tehickan students transition. They have a relationship with the families that are going to get dispersed to at least 2 different elementary schools. I don't know what the exact plan is. I do apologize for that. But those children that need to go to a new school deserve to have their guidance counselor who knows their name, who knows what makes them tick, there to help them transition to a new school. Mrs. Gordon has helped us with 504 plans for 2 of our children. She helps us with documentation whenever we need it. My kids talk about when she comes into the classroom. You know, we have money for other things. We should have money for proper staffing as well. Thank you.
Rick Orloff.
Could you give me just 1 minute? I'd like to address some things to the audience, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
There is no doubt that not a single teacher that... Apologize. How's that? Testing. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Everyone that's on the furlough list is an incredible employee and is student-centered and children first in their action. I know I have the principal for Laura Gordon right here with Mr. Schmucker, and he has pleaded to not let us furlough a teacher or his guidance counselor. I know how great she is. I've watched her in action in meetings, in data team meetings. But one thing, sir, good to see you. It has been a while. I would say everything you said is correct. One of the things that I need I would like to share with new board members, and it's a data that I added yesterday or this morning to the slide. Could you bring that up so we have a little bit of background? The board has, in the last 4 years, added in numerous guidance counselors. It used to be you at POF only had a half-time guidance counselor. 4 years ago, in the fall of 2014, we added three guidance counselors to the elementary level, and so we have a full-time guidance counselor in every elementary school. Last year, when the board voted to close Milford, we didn't access a guidance counselor. Matter of fact, the guidance counselors are there. So you have 1 per building at the elementary level. You have, with roughly the same enrollment at the 6th grade center, 2 guidance counselors, and with the same basically enrollment, a little bit less students at Strayer this year. We still have 3 full-time guidance counselors. So you have more guidance counselors, or the same guidance counselors as we had last year. If you look at the data here in Bucks County and the surrounding areas, we have the best guidance counselor to student ratio in the county, definitely, and in the region, most likely. We had a couple other places up here on the list, like Southern Lehigh. As Doc Kelly talked about how wonderful she is and how important it is, definitely given what's been going on the last 4 weeks in the country, it's been exacerbated for years. It's just coming to the forefront and in all the news. Right now, we have the least amount of students. It's 309 students per guidance counselor. Now, the professional association, Doc, I've seen that, is 250 to 1. My goal as a principal, as a middle school and high school principal, and as a superintendent, it was 325 to 1. The national average is 483. 483 students to 1 guidance counselor, which is dreadful. And we're at 309 right now and ranked number 1 in the region for guidance counselors to student ratio. So the board has, in the recent past, has allowed us, the administration and our team, to hire and have 1 guidance counselor per building at the elementary levels to help that and to support those things. Because as Doc will tell you, he'll get up here and talk for hours. The issues are on set much earlier than they ever have been before. And not just bullying, but I would tell you, sir, I used to get beat up on the way home from school because my dad was a cop, not a farmer. And so that was in elementary school, so I can appreciate that. And I didn't have a guidance counselor to help me with that. My dad told me to go out and figure it out.
Yeah, but the kids aren't allowed to figure it out.
That's exactly right. You're right.
They need the support.
They need the support. So right now, and so with this happening. We'll go to number 2 in the county overall. So I just want to make sure the facts are out there and how we look and all that, not to minimize what we're doing. Laura Gordon is a phenomenal guidance counselor, and so it's not about that. And we'll have later on in the meeting, we'll have the board will have a discussion about the furlough process. But I wanted to put the facts and thank the students and the parents who have come out here tonight, and also the fellow faculty members for supporting that. Thank you.
Dr. Harner, could I ask one question? How do we choose who goes on the list to be furloughed?
Sir, can we have that later on when we have the meeting and the discussion? Thank you. Thank you. That's a good idea.
Are we ready for Mr. Orloff?
Thank you, members of the board. I'm here mainly to talk about the budget and the Act 1 and the taxpayer. Incidentally, I understand some of the sympathies that were expressed here. I also would say that there's also some false choices that are being put forth as well, but that's a story for another day. On Saturday, I was talking with one of my clients. He's basically like a walking economy. The front of his hair is in recession. He's his stomach's in inflation, and the combination of both put him into a deep depression. So he also told me he's strapped for cash, and he hadn't the slightest idea where he's going to get it from. And I was very happy to hear that, because I was afraid he had an idea he was going to get it from me. But on a more serious note, we're talking about OPM, other people's money. I was a little disappointed that I requested, and it was nixed, that I could have a slide up here, just like you had the slide up there about the counselor to student ratio. It does make it easier to make a point, but that was denied me. Anyway, the proposal I'm making tonight is to abide by Act 1. Now, by the way, if something of anything costs too much, you're going to have fewer of it, less of it. So there might be a way to keep these furloughs from happening in another alternative, and I'll get to that in a moment. I wasn't planning on talking about that, but hearing that, this might actually play to that. Act 1 is an inflationary index to which schools can increase taxes unimpeded. Note that it's always been above the Commerce Department's CPI index or the Social Security index, and also wage growth. So the Act 1 index put forth by the state is higher than inflation, and that's been about 1% higher each of the last 10 years, about roughly there. Specific allowances are allowed to exceed Act 1. Procedural hurdles to raise taxes above Act 1 exist, and that's what we're going through now. And by the way, for the new members of the board, when you voted to not abide by Act 1, you basically dominated the first 4 months of the of maybe 5 months of the agenda with Act 1 procedural votes and meetings and so forth. Had the edict been sent down to abide by Act 1, then the administration would have moved forward. You would have had a final budget vote. But once you did that, that's going to be the dominant agenda item for almost a half a year. QCSD's proposed 4.2%. That's, I think the Act 1 was 2.8%. QCSD is given a higher rate than the state average due to its higher poverty rate. Could go as high as 6%. QCSD's stated reasons to request the Act 1 exceptions, and it's something you can always pull out of the old playbook, is the pension obligations, increased health insurance, and special educational exceptions. It's been repeated on both sides of the aisle, and I think it's a total myth. 90% of the budget cannot be touched. It can. Only debt service has great difficulty in touching it, and even that can be refinanced with advantage in declining interest rate environments. But for the foreseeable future, that ship looks like it has sailed. All else can be touched. The private sector does it every day. Maybe it might be a hot touch, but it can still be touched, and they can do it. Bethlehem Steel, a generation ago, failed to touch things too early, and as a result, they're not around anymore. Some costs are spin-offs of others. You got to aim at the root of the costs, such as the fringes that attach to wages. Even healthcare insurances, you can shop, design plans, co-pays, deductibles, wellness credits. If QCSD's health plan costs have increased as a member of a co-op, its utilization must have increased, and I would say why? Or ask why, rather. At one point in the last 4 years, QCSD, excuse me a second. An QCSD has lived at Act 1 the past 4 years. It's exceeded Act 1 or 2 years in the previous 5 or 6 years before that. That's nothing to brag about, by the way. Cumulatively, that's at least a 20% compounded tax increase over 8 years. Factor growth in the tax base, spending increases even more. QCSD never spent $1 less than any prior year, never. QCSD is Bucks County's only district to have gone 30-plus consecutive years with a tax increase. Under the Scanlon administration, you had a 7-year period where with the QCSD increased spending 70%, but taxes only increased 50%. I got a question for you, especially you newbies. How could that happen? How could you increase spending by 70%, but only increase by taxes by 50%? How could that happen? How about some of the old board members? You should know.
It's your floor time, sir.
You're showing your ignorance, sir. Anyway, moving on. Oh, by the way, to answer the question is, the tax base was growing tremendously from like roughly 2000 to 2006. So even by standing still, there would have been a 20% increase in tax revenue. But they outpaced that with a 70% increase in spending. It all basically went to new hiring, increased wages and benefits. Prior to Jim Scanlon, the student-teacher ratio was staff-teacher ratio was about 12.5 to 1, and at the end of the Scanlon administration, it was about 8.8 to 1. So there was a lot of hiring that was going on at that particular time. There was one new facility, but all the existing facilities were ignored, as well as the decades before. Academic experimentation, integrated math, SBG, they dropped geography, earth and space sciences, no standards for history, springboard English, and the results were increased cost, declining census, which means declining productivity, and mediocre academic results. Everyone gets an award. 80% of the grades given out in Quakertown are 80s. So my proposal, at least on the fiscal side of this thing, is that the staff, the entire staff of QCSD, takes a 0% pay reduction. And I also propose this in deference to our progressives on the board, to take it as a progressive reduction. Say you make less than $25,000, no reduction in compensation. In the past several years, I think there's been too much budget focus to try to balance the whole issue on aides, busing, cafeteria, and janitorial issues. You really have to go where the dollars are. From $25,000 to $50,000, take a 0.5% cut in pay. From $50,000 to $75,000, take a 1% cut in pay. From $75,000 to $100,000, a 1.5% cut in pay. And anybody making above $100,000, a 2% cut in pay. Now, with the mean W-2 compensation of $94,000, more than half of the QCSD employees are paid above $100,000. The weighting of the lower paid staff brings the mean down to $94,000. Then you're also going to see some spin-offs. Every dollar you reduce in salaries, you save 7.65 cents in the Social Security match. There's I don't know, 3 or 4, maybe 5 cents on the pensions, plus a reduction in workers' comp. There are false solutions. Early retirement's a false solution. You get a short-term cash flow savings, but what you do is add to the long-term greater costs, especially in PESers. There's been several attempts at refinancing in the past. Again, what they do is they throw they push the debt service out further, so you get a reduction, immediate reduction in cash flow, but you add to the total cost of the district. And by the way, those chickens have come home to roost, given the early retirements and the redebt services that we've had in the last 10, 15 years. Benchmarks. You could look at other districts. You could look at the community at large, and I got some here, by the way. You can look at the private sector job markets, and I would say between 2005, or rather since 2005, QCSD has ranged between the 3rd and 12th richest contract in Pennsylvania. So we've sort of created an entitled aristocracy. Take the 0 to 2% reduction. That's about the 15. That would move you from 12th. I think presently we're at the 12th richest contract. That would probably knock it back to the 15th richest contract out of 501 school districts. So when you're encumbered by the richest contracts, you're going to have the heaviest PESers obligation. Pensions are always a percentage of wages. Boards, since the prompting of Scanlon, left QCSD with that 3rd to the 12th heaviest PESers obligations. And again, those chickens are coming home to roost. Now, what's the effects? If you make the average $94,000, that's a $1,400 reduction in gross pay. Take the 22% marginal federal tax bracket, Social Security match, Pennsylvania tax, EIT, Pennsylvania UEC, about 35% of that's going to taxes. So that would be a cash reduction of about $926, or 17, 18 bucks a week. So the gross pay would become $92,590. Now, there's a lot of union members here. These guys haven't asked you. I'm asking you. And I think the community would say that. If you really want to stop the furloughs, buck up. In terms of the sympathy, if you take a look at these, I would have loved to put this stat up here, and the school district has it for the whole school district. This is just Richland Township. These are the earned income statistics. There are 2 people in Richland Township in the year 2013. There's about a 3-year lag to get this because it takes 3 years to get all the collections in. So forgive me that. This is the last I have available. There are 2 people in Richland Township that made more than $1 million. By the way, we don't want them to move. They're paying, each one of those are paying about $15,000 in earned income tax. Conversely, you have 489 people out of 8,187 taxpayers making $100,000 or more. That's only about 5-6% of the community makes more than $100,000. half the Quakertown Community School District makes more than $100,000. I'm talking about the employee basis. For 9 months, very good. Okay. So you do that if you can adopt the 0 to 2% solution or something akin to that. Problem solved. You got to probably have another $500,000 you got to squeeze out somewhere else. You may be able to avoid the furloughs. So you also have the choice of optics. You can refuse any givebacks, and the community suffers a 4.2% tax increase. And the union agrees, or if they decide to help and they abide by Act 1, loaded Act 1 with all labor costs, then that would be an optic too. You have choice of 2 optics. Either demand it of the community, and trust me, outside of this room, I don't think there's a lot of sympathy for a 4.2% tax increase. I have a client who has a business. They have rental commercial property, and their lease is tied to the real estate taxes. How they arrive. That's a pass through. In another year and a half, they're moving. They're taking 3 jobs with them. Okay, I have another lady, a friend of my mother's. She wanted to move up here, and I told her about the taxes in here. Her kids live up here. She's not going to move in Quakertown now. So people are going to start voting with their feet, and it's happening. There's other little things I'm hearing. I talked to a state rep who says that his #1 complaint in the last several weeks is 4.2%. They think it's insane in this environment. So. With that said, it's up to you guys to go back and decide if you want to buck up or you want to demand the community pays 4.2%. That's all. Thank you.
Hey, any more general public comments? Well, we got one. Yeah, Mr. Spears, Mr. Spears, you were second. Next to you, to your left. And then Mr. Wee, and then Mr. Spears. I know. It's never a meeting till we hear from you.
All right. 2 things. My name is Scott Hendricks, Milford Township, and I'm also the vice president for the support staff. 2 things I'd like to say about what Mr. Orloff said here. Myself, I personally took a $6,000, 15% pay cut, so don't anybody come up here and say I didn't put any money into this community, and that includes you. Okay? Second of all, you raised the taxes in Richland Township over 300% in 1 year, so I don't want to hear it.
I think Mr. Wien, you want to go next? Yeah.
Ryan Wien, QCA president. Sorry if I'm all over the place. Now my notes have turned into like a roadmap here, so I apologize. As far as I know, to the best of my knowledge, we're the only district in Bucks County looking to furlough teachers. How is every other board and administration able to pull it off, figure it out? They're all dealing with pension increases, increased healthcare costs, but they make it work without furloughing. At the same time, many of those districts have programs such as full-day kindergarten, widespread full-day kindergarten. That matches about 77% of Pennsylvania districts, I believe, have full-day kindergarten. A lot have team time, another program cut, research-based program cut. At what point is it the board's fault? I've heard the pension argument, I've heard the healthcare argument this year, but never look at your own spending. We've had major disruptions to teaching positions in this district in the past few years. Luckily, not many furloughs in that time, but transfers, demotions, the threat of demotions. And then we wonder why scores aren't improving. Why we had presentations a couple meetings ago not showing where we want to be with our scores. All of these things have an effect on those scores and on our students' performances. At the same time you're discussing furloughing teachers and guidance counselors and nurses, there's a proposal for one more administrator. to hire one more administrator at the high school. There's already three assistants, is that correct, or am I wrong? 3 assistants and 1 teacher on special assignment and 1 principal. At a time when class sizes are going to be increasing, we've been told for at least 3 years with the decision to build onto NIDIG, why would we furlough our precious human resources? I'm urging you to postpone the vote tonight for these furloughs and allow Dr. Harner to find the money, as many of you have applauded him for doing in the past. The 400-to-1 ratio national average of guidance counselors doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right that we might be number 1, but we're not where we should be. That doesn't make it right. As far as our contract and the amount we're paid, we bargained a fair contract with you. We bargained that contract under projections that the district came to us with for the next few years. We decided on those increases based on those projections. So were those projections wrong? We had a 0% increase on scale last year, 0.5 this year. These aren't these major lucrative contracts that some might make you think it sounds like we have. We make a lot of money, but we earn it. Our clients, Mr. Orloff, are children. And why should they suffer?
Thank you, Mr. Wien. Mr. Spears?
Chris Spear, Milford Township. It's not plural. I'm not related to Brittany. There's only one, yes. I wanted to talk tonight about the budget and about teacher furloughs and about things, luxuries that we can't afford in this district. My notes are now all over the place as well. I had to cross a bunch of stuff out and move it around, so I'll try to put it in some type of reasonable order here. I had to cross out the whole first part because somebody else already spoke about it, but the transportation costs since the closing of Milford have been up $668,585 a year. I believe this is unnecessary. Along with this, the district should not have to pay to shuttle students between the 6th grade center and Strayer and pay separate coaches for the team sports that are all between it. It's just a waste of money. The 6th grade center is wasting money. We're still operating 2 schools to essentially teach the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. My proposal here is to utilize the 6th grade center as an elementary school. Cancel the NIDIG job, because I believe this is something we can't afford right now. You know, $20 million when we don't have budget to pay our teachers, when we don't have budgets to do anything else, it just doesn't seem like it's a necessary expense. You can cancel the NIDIG job, reutilize Milford as a middle school, use the 6th grade center as an elementary school until you can afford to build a new elementary school or add on to NIDIG or whatever you need to do. I believe operating one whole school for just one grade is inefficient. The other thing, I have a bunch of smaller things on here too. I noticed when going through the budget, the line items on there, that the advertising is up $5,285 per year. I believe that that newsletter you're sending out quarterly is a waste of money. The district used to print and give out calendars years ago. They stopped doing that to save money. Now they replace it with a newsletter that has to be mailed out at way more expense. It's just something we shouldn't be doing right now. I mean, that's not a huge thing, but And I'm sorry for Gary too, but I believe having a full-time PR person is another luxury we can't afford. Sure, it would be really nice, but to pay somebody full-time to write a newsletter, to write blogs, to send out emails when schools are closed, that could all be done by the administrative staff. And that brings me to one other thing too. When going through all the budget items on the website, I did notice that the administrative costs are only laid out by average salaries. Now, I can see the teacher's cost, every other cost per year as a whole. All I see is the administrator's average salaries. I want to see, like, from 2003, 2004, even back a little further, to see if the administrative costs have gone up. Because I believe there is cuts to be made. There's about $3 million that needs to be saved in order for the school to pass a budget within the Act 1 index. That's 2.7% of the budget. I believe some of that can come from administrative consolidation instead of teaching consolidation. I believe it's there, but it's not laid out on the website how much those total costs were, only the average salary. So, blah, blah, blah. Oh, another thing about the busing, the transportation costs. I saw on the agenda there's an item coming up to renew the lease with Richland Township and Raza for the softball fields use. Well, couldn't we use Milford's softball fields? I know I've brought this up before and it hasn't been really said, but maybe with a small investment into those, they're sitting there unused. It wouldn't cost any money. I believe that should be something that should be looked into. Again, it's a luxury we can't afford. The Richland fields are nice, but why should we have to pay for something we can't afford at the cost of cutting teachers, counselors, lunch people, anything? What Dr. Kelly said about my writing is terrible. What Dr. Kelly said isn't just relevant to class sizes, but also lunch sizes. My middle school daughter has told me most fights, most problems really occur during these lunch periods. And I found out there's only 2 lunch periods in the high school for 1,500 students and 2 lunch periods in the middle school for 860 students or 840. That's a lot of kids in the same spot. There isn't enough adult supervision to really monitor that. You know, when I went to high school, there was far less people and there was 4 lunch periods. You know, it's a lot easier to manage, a lot easier to prevent possible problems. And I know it sort of messes with your pride periods and stuff like that, but I believe that's something that could be worked out too. Sorry, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to cut this down. And, oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's about it. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Chris, when are you going to run for a board seat?
When you decide to give yours up.
No, you can, because I know Dr. Harner would love to spend hours and hours with you week after week. There we go. All right. Is there any more general comments before we go on? Right there. There we go. And state your name and area of residence.
Cancel.
Did you bring an instrument?
I did. I brought a flute for Mr. Jackson's daughter. My name is Joe Santinello. I am a resident of Richland Township. I'm a Quakertown music teacher. I teach band at Strayer Middle School, and I direct the Panther Marching Band at the high school. And I've been in the district for 9 years. I'm one of the many, many teachers in our district who gladly work 50, 55, 60-hour weeks. Have the benefit of being very publicly seen all the time. My hours of work are spent at school, in front of kids, after school, in the evenings, doing rehearsals. But I know there's this myth out there that a lot of teachers leave right when the bell rings, and they don't think about work, and they don't do work until the bell rings the next morning. And just because we don't see them at school doing work doesn't mean it's not happening. I know those teachers leave with bags full of essays to grade, tests to grade. They're on our Canvas platform communicating with students all hours of the day. And I think that's important to recognize, that there's a myth out there that our teachers are clocking out and forgetting about our kids, and don't think that could be further from the truth. Just want to also comment a little bit. I have no notes, so here we go. Just kind of winging it. Sometimes the data is not always telling the right story. I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm sure someone here can tell me how many students attend Trumbowersville Elementary.
Right there, the principal.
385 right now.
385. So to say that we have a 309 student to counselor ratio is an average that doesn't really mean anything. Because Trumbowersville Elementary's student to counselor ratio is 385 to 1. And next year it's not going to get better. And I don't know what the numbers are at the other elementary schools. So to say 309 to 1 is a nice number, but a lot of times averages aren't telling us the whole story. And I think that's really important for our board to consider. We've seen all the averages of class sizes, and now we're seeing a guidance counselor average. The averages don't really mean anything in reality. I think there's also going to be some people that are going to talk about this teacher contract. And I just want to say that I don't think it should ever come to the point that we point to the contract as a reason for furloughs. This contract, as Ryan commented, was fairly bargained between the board and the teachers union, and it's not a surprise. We signed it 2 years ago. We knew what it was going to be, and we knew what it is, and we have 3 more years of it. And to point to this contract now and say, well, salaries this, seniority this, I don't think that's a fair representation of our contract put out to the public. So I just want the board to consider that as well. And finally, as we talked about with our counselor, our nurse, just generally the morale of our district. I know teacher morale has been something we've commented on many times and had many discussions about. And people can say, well, they have nothing to be so sorry about. They make $100,000 a year. They do this, they do that. The truth is, the last 4 years in our district have been chaotic. And for whatever reason, some of them outside of our control and some of them not. But for whatever reason, there's been a lot of chaos here for the last 4 years. There's been a lot of teachers changing positions. There's been a ton of teachers teaching subjects they've never taught before. There's been a ton of teachers teaching grades they've never taught before. There's a ton of teachers who had spent 15, 20 years in a elementary school's community and family and knew every single person in that neighborhood and every sibling and every parent and every aunt and uncle, and then get dropped in a different neighborhood and a different school. Those things are not only stressful to our teachers, but they're not good for kids. And that's the bottom line. None of us teachers got into this because we wanted to have really great health care or make $100,000 at the end. You can ask any teacher in this school district why they got into teaching. And I guarantee you're not going to hear not one person say they got into teaching because they wanted a really nice salary and great health care. Many people will say we have it, but that's not why we're here. That's not why we give our time past the contracted hours in Quakertown. We do it because we care about kids. We want to help kids. We want to help our community. And every time we move a teacher from one grade to another, or from one school to another, or we have 7 people retire and we don't replace any of those positions, or we furlough, or we do anything like that, it causes a ton of stress for the teachers. It's very traumatic. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is it's really bad for the kids. As one of our other speakers said earlier, those poor kids at Trumbowersville, that desperately need that guidance counselor. Not a guidance counselor. They need that guidance counselor. To take that person away is terrible for our children. And that's what I hope to keep everyone aware of this evening. It's so easy to get caught up in numbers, averages, thinking of our teachers and counselors and nurses as pawns that we move around. But the most important thing, remember, is those are human beings that have a connection with a whole bunch of other little human beings. And when we start moving things around like this, and we start taking some pawns out and not replacing them, yeah, it sucks for us, but I'm an adult. I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to buck up, I guess you could say. But for the kids, it's traumatic, it's damaging, and it's unacceptable.
I was a teacher in this district, and just so all of you know, in the early 90s, there was a budget problem, and the teachers at that time gave up half of their raise. They took their raise and let it go from September to January. And at that time, I was making about $30,000, and we did that. So, you know, to consider giving something up to maybe keep some of your staff seems to me like something that might be possibly done.
That kind of like shoots down what I was about to say in a way. But what I was going to say, and Mr. Anderson interjected a little bit, aside from what Mr. Anderson just said, nobody on this board has ever sat here, nobody on this board has ever sat here and looked at the union members out there and said, we expect a cut in your salary. Several members of the audience have stood up and said, we expect your salaries to be cut. Why don't you give back 5%? Why don't you give back 10%? Nobody on this board said that. Mr. Anderson accepting again. But we haven't said that. And when Mr. Santinello got up there and looked at the board and said, well, we're really not happy that we keep hearing, we don't say that. We understand you guys, we negotiated a contract with you, and you're in the middle of the contract. Nobody here is seeking recompense of any salaries. That's the one thing I want to say about that.
Comments before we go on? Oh, there we go. Come on. Come on up. State your name and area residence. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Miss Bishop is boning me up on protocol. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I'll be quick, I promise. My name is Katie Grayshuk Robbins. I've been in the school district for 13 years, and I live in Pennsburg, and I attended Upper Perk School District. However, from the time I was a little girl, I had the honor, and I'm going to use that word, I had the honor of being in room 118 at Tuican Valley Elementary, where my mom taught for, I believe, 35 years. And there's nothing worse that anyone can say to an educator than they leave at 4 o'clock and their day is done, or they get paid for 9 months. I went in to take your daughter to school day every time I could go, take your child to work day, and I loved it. And I learned to respect educators, because when my mom could have been playing board games with me at night, she sat on the couch and she graded papers, or she still sends letters to students that graduated and meets with them at the pavilion. Why? Because she loves them. We signed up for this profession because we love children. We want to make a difference. It's not about the salary, and I don't want to hear that anymore. The problem with furloughing educators is you're furloughing people that have a passion to teach, a passion to touch the lives of children. And when you furlough, you take away a piece of them. And I know each of you work hard up here, and I'm not going to speak to what you do, and I'm not going to speak to another profession's salary because I don't know what they do day in and day out, and I think it's ignorant to speak about a salary in which you do not do their job. But I will say that the art teacher that's on here to be demoted, she's exceptional. Every lunch, I drop my kids off to eat their lunch. And I'm going to tell you what our art teacher's doing. She's eating lunch with children every single day. She has open art. Our population of special needs in Path Elementary School, it's high. And I'm going to tell you, she's exceptional with all children, and she makes each and every one of them feel amazing and empowered and able. And I'm not angry, and I know my voice is quivering because I'm passionate. I love my job. There's nothing else. It's not even a job, it's a passion, it's my life. And, you know, I'm sorry I don't know the other educator that spoke before me, but I can tell that he is passionate as well. And before you make this vote, if you can hold off on this vote, I'm begging you to, because by your vote, you're changing 9 staff lives, you're changing student lives. We need them. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you. Any more public comments? Okay, that said, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Horner?
Yes, sir. We only have one report. Janet, would you do the introduction?
Sure. Good evening. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce Elizabeth Alvino, who is one of our Superior High School teachers who works with our learning support and our life skills students. Elizabeth this year took on an additional challenge by opening up a new program. I don't want to talk too much about it. She has a presentation and 2 students here this evening, and one of our support staff members here as well to talk through exactly what we're doing and the exciting things happening at the high school. So this is Mrs. Alvino, and she can introduce the students at the end. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Dr. Harner, for inviting me to talk about Aspire. Aspire is a new program at the high school. We started in September.
I'm sorry, can you use the microphone, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
And up.
Becomes the person that maybe solve your problem.
Right. No.
Can you just use the arrow keys?
The what?
Just use. Is this your presentation? Or? Yeah. I don't know if your clicker will work, but that'll work at least.
Okay, thank you. Yep, it works. Okay, so Aspire is an acronym because we're special ed, that's what we do. It stands for Acquiring Skills, Professionalism, Independence, and Responsibility for Education and Employment. It is a program for students 18 to 21, so many students, not many, but a group of students after they meet their graduation requirements may not be ready to leave school, and they are entitled to additional education. Previously, we would contract with other out-of-district programs at great expense to the district. So this program is actually saving the district a great deal of money, but more importantly, it is individualized, it's focused on the student's needs and goals, and it is designed to be a 3-year program, so we will revisit the same skills over and over at their increasing levels of instruction. So something like banking skills, we'll keep at it and
keep increasing the level of difficulty for students. It is highly individualized. In other words, we are basing each student's program on what their interests are, what their goals for employment are, and what their abilities are. Other programs sometimes funnel all the students into culinary or into one area, and we are not doing that. In fact, we have a student who wants to work in early child care, and he's doing an internship helping in the kindergarten over at QE. So other students have interests in game design, and we're looking at jobs in, like, you know, in that area. We're using community-based instruction, so we're out there in the community looking at different types of jobs and also service learning. Where many times students with IEPs are on the receiving end of help, and we want them to know that they are contributing members of society, that they can help many people themselves. And our goal is for them to be as independent as possible going forward. So the Aspire is actually 3 courses. It's period 5, 6, and 7 in a high school day. And the first period, period 5, is employment skills. And you can see the topics that we cover. One of the most important is the social skills in the workplace. So as soon as the bell rings and 5th period starts, they're not at school anymore, they're at work. And we conduct classes the way a workplace staff meeting would be. They're expected to treat each other like colleagues and step up to a much more mature level of communication with each other. They all have accounts with job search tools. PA Career Zone is one that we use along with Naviance. And that way they can research jobs, they can research careers, they can research post-secondary education. They all have resumes on there that they update regularly. And that PA Career Zone account will actually be something they can do after they leave us. In fact, if they type in, they'll keep their account. If they type in NJ Career Zone, it'll show them the same things with their account in New Jersey. So there's actually a budgeting tool there. They can find out the cost of living and in different parts of the state and also in local states. So thank you for the Panther van. We use it all the time. It is, without it, we'd be lost. Part of our community-based learning is finding out about different jobs that students may not have thought of. This is a local farm, and as we left this tour, I was told that the students would be welcome to come back for actual employment. We've also toured other places in this community, and that's one of our strengths, is this is focused on Quakertown. This is Lowe's, and we learned that most of the employees at Lowe's have high school diplomas. Most of them learn their specialty on the job. And if they want to move from carpentry to horticulture, there are training things, and they can sign up and do that and get into things that are more interesting to them. Most of our students have pets at home, love pets. A lot of them thought they might want to work with pets. So we do move around the community. We also do service learning. We go to Quakertown Food Pantry once a week, and the students, all those donations that come from the high school, we sort them, we look at their labels, we make sure they're not out of date, we get them on the shelves, and we get them ready to be distributed. We also learned that they have pet food for the people with pets, so sometimes we repackage the pet food for them. We work once a week at Swan's Pantry, and we do the things that their employees do, which is awesome, that they're wonderful for us there. They always have work waiting for us, set aside, and we need to use a lot of teamwork with that. Many times they'll have one of those display pallets, and we'll have to totally unpack it, repack it with price tags on it, and keep it all in order in the right categories. And kids, I think, really enjoy going there. They're very nice to us. So just a sense of the pride that students get from doing, whoop, didn't mean to do that. Some of the students find that they have a special gift for some things they never thought of. And he is very proud of that. Okay, so daily living skills are things that we sometimes call adulting now. It's a new term, right? One important part of that is personal finance. So we do lessons that are functional math and involve banking and understanding credit, things like that. Another very important thing is health and safety, learning when to see a doctor, how to, what things can be cared for at home safely, and staying out of the emergency room for everything. And nutrition and healthy food, we cover that as well. Okay, so we have a bank. Aspire has its own bank. It pays interest on savings. Students get a paycheck every week. They deposit their paycheck after they endorse their check appropriately. Their account accrues interest, unlike my checking account, and it encourages them to understand the value of saving. And then that checking account can be used either to save for something big like a pizza party, or they can buy a fidget spinner, earbuds, a snack, something like that. This is an online store. The items are actually in the room, but they shop online. There's an online form, and they write a check to make those purchases. We also provide meals to Aid for Friends. We make 24 meals a month, so we're now up to 144 meals that we've prepared. And this starts with discussing the nutrition of the meal, what's appropriate for the season. Our first meal was for Thanksgiving. We did it in October. And making sure that it's nutritionally balanced, economical. We're not going to compete with Chef Polk on this. We want meals that they can eat at home, that they can afford at home. And all of our meals are pleasant to look at. They're all prepared with ServSafe protocol. So the students are learning that. So if they do want to go into food service, they will know what the procedures are. And you can see that was our last meal prep with our 24 meals. They're all packaged up for Aid for Friends. And it's similar to Meals for Wheels. It's for homebound people. We do work for Hope Restored, which is a thrift shop in town. Go there, ladies. It's really nice clothing. They're moving to a better, bigger location right next to Moyer's Shoes. And the proprietor tells me that once they're there, she'll be able to have our students working in the shop as well. But right now, what we do is we pick up their donations. And we sort through it. We inspect them. We discard some for recycling, but some of them we launder, we iron. There's Lainey putting a price tag with the price tagging gun, and then we deliver them back to Hope Restored every 2 weeks. So the students are learning how to do laundry, but they're also helping the community in a really important way, because this organization provides scholarships for people that need rehabilitation from addiction. Our last course is self-advocacy and interpersonal skills, and you can see our topics there. And one of the most important things in this category, many of these skills we embed in all the other activities, but keeping them safe so that they can make safe decisions going forward when they're, not with their parents all the time is one of the most important parts of this course. Whoops. So what I'm hoping for going forward, we started this year with 5 students. And by now we're up to 8, and I believe we have a 9th starting soon. We have 11 students enrolled definitely for next year. Those are students who don't have to be placed out of the district. And that's and counting, because as IEPs are happening, we are getting more students, and possibly even one from another district, which will be a tuition-paying student. And so I'm looking for additional community partnerships. If any of you have a business you'd like us to be able to tour, if you have an opportunity for a student to do an internship, please let me know. Oops, sorry. Also, we're setting up a school store, an actual school store where their students will learn to use cash register, how to make purchases, pricing, things like that, inventory. Next year, we're hoping to be a full-day program, not just a half-day, and that'll give us more opportunities in the community, because there's some things that we need to be able to get there a little earlier. And we're also looking for more opportunities for individualized work study. So now I'll have Lainey and Stephen come on up here and tell you what they like about Aspire. Lainey, what do you like about Aspire? You want to go first?
No.
No? Uh-oh.
Okay then.
Go ahead, Stephen.
What I like about Aspire is working at Swan's Pantry. When I'm there, I stock and price items. I also use the crusher to crush boxes and keep the store safe and clean.
Thank you. What do you like to do at Aspire, Lainey?
I like learning new jobs.
You like cooking, right?
I like cooking.
And she's really good with that price gun also. Okay. That enough?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the last thing I'm going to say is please follow us on Twitter. We're doing some really exciting things. Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you very much. If you don't have anything else, Dr. Harner, then...
No, but I just want to thank you very much for your program, your initiative, all the hours upon hours of hard work to make it happen, and what you're doing for our children, and also bringing those that have left us back in-house so we can do it, because we can do it better ourselves. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you. Okay. Right. Moving on to our standing committee reports. First one is Finance Committee report. That's me. Tonight in the Finance Committee, we got a third look at the 2018-2019 budget, which now shows a budget shortfall of just over $2 million, down from $3 million at the Act 1 index. A little better than $1 million from the last look. The savings predominantly come from salaries and health cares, accounting for most of that difference. We also received an update on the intermediate unit budget, which is projected to be $4.8 million next year. We have the amendment to the school facilities bond left over from the high school to provide funding for the Richland Elementary School restroom restoration, the 6th grade center parking lot, and the Trumbowersville Elementary roof replacement. That's added to the agenda action items, which we will vote on tonight. And that's it from the Finance Committee, unless Ms. Mitchell has something to add. Okay, so moving on to the Policy Committee. Everyone's favorite?
What? Get no respect. It is exciting. But we didn't have a policy committee tonight. This is from February. So there were second reading and board approval were done last time, and there's been no changes made to these since the first reading. So it is Policy 303, Employment of Administrative Employees. We basically updated the language to combine administrative, professional, and classified employees into one. Our goal is to reduce as much as possible. 403 was employment of professional employees. 503, employment of classified employees, same thing. So 327 was the leadership team, and we updated some titles to more accurately reflect our leadership team. These are riveting. 408, employment contract, new policy for professional personnel. 411, suspensions and furloughs. Titles have been updated to accurately reflect our professional personnel. Mind you, some of these policies haven't been touched in, like, I don't know, 20 years, right, Alice?
Right.
So somebody has to do it. And then you notice nobody else from the policy committee is here. We updated 428.1 salary guide. Language is simplified and collective bargaining agreement was referenced. 432 was working periods. Strangely enough, these things are documented and clock times for the school day were revised. 530 overtime, minor revisions were made to the language for overtime hours. 815.1 email usage and retention, language was removed that no longer reflects our current practice regarding the email backup server. I'm sure Joe, who's not here, could tell us more. Policies are that we're retiring. 308 employment contract, 508 employment contract, 332 working periods, 528 wage and salary. So that's the good news. We didn't add anything and we got rid of some. There'll be a quiz later.
Okay, Bucks County Intermediate Unit, Mr. Jackson.
The IU is scheduled to meet on Tuesday down in Doylestown, which is the location, but unfortunately because of the snow, we did it by telephone, which is nice, but we're still able to do it. Included the list of bills that were, or motions that were passed at that meeting, as long as the typical awesome news, so you can see all the highlights of some of the programs that the IU runs throughout the year. So those who care to can look that up at their leisure. And that's really all I have to say about the IU.
Legislative report, Mr. Jackson.
Legislative report. One of the things I want to highlight right away is I know Ms. Mitchell at our last meeting, because a legislative subject was raised, suggested that perhaps there should be somewhere to put information that would be interesting to the community at large with regard to this type of information. Legislative bills proposed out of Harrisburg that may have an effect on the community and the school district in general. I've asked that Alice put this up in a public manner on board docs every month, because this legislative report that I bring today comes from the IU. They have a representative at the IU who stays in touch daily with people in Harrisburg and updates us at our IU board meeting every month. And I take that information and I post it here for your use. So this information should be publicly accessible on board docs today. And I've asked Alice to keep that going from now on. So for those who care to look, there's always going to be a legislative report at the second meeting of every month that has interesting things, such as with school safety being such a hot topic, there's no shortage of people in Harrisburg and nationally who want to do something. As of March 12th, there are 26 different bills making their way through Harrisburg. So I'm not about to tell you what will or may happen. I just don't know. But those who pretend to be knowledgeable on the subject out in Harrisburg are working on some way to mess up our lives. The Auditor General has taken it upon himself to expand his influence in checking out school safety when they do audits of our schools and whatnot. There's a list on the legislative report of additional places they're looking at when they come to look at the schools, see if we're safe. Other items of interest. The House last year passed a bill, House Bill 153, to reduce the number of state legislatures down from 203 to 151, which frankly I think is a great thing. You know, less people in Harrisburg is always a good thing. That has to pass for 2 consecutive sessions in a row before it can go to the public and make its way as a constitutional amendment. However, the legislature of Harrisburg, having passed it last year, they have to pass the exact same bill. They cannot make any changes to it. Apparently, somebody thought that it wasn't such a great idea to reduce it so quickly, so they've instituted some changes, which means the clock would start all over again if the changes passed. and they'd have to pass this one with the changes and wait another year and pass it again the following year. So it's my understanding that this is just a way to kick the can down the road. I know that's Mr. McCucci's favorite saying. There you go.
Can kicking full.
So it's things of interest to the school board. House Bill 638 is making its way through the legislature. What that will do will prevent the school board position from cross-filing in elections. That's making its way through the legislature this moment. Not sure if it'll pass, but that's the proposal. Similarly, I know Mr. Spear had an issue several meetings ago about things that are brought forth on the floor by school boards or other legislative bodies without the public's ability to comment on it or have advanced warning. House Bill 1531 is making its way, an amendment to the Sunshine Act, which would prevent that. Any action motion cannot be made on the floor at a meeting and voted on without first having been advertised and allowed for the public to make comment on it. So if this were to pass, that kind of happening would be prevented in the future. And lastly, we're all in the middle of a budget sequence of the year, a budget annual budget process. Tax reform has been talked about a lot, whether or not the state will pass property tax elimination. It's all set up to do that. Everybody in Harrisburg believes it's a done deal. The question is simply a matter of time. This being an election year, rumor has it nobody's willing to make that bold step until after November, so it's unlikely anything will happen this year. But for those of us who concern ourselves with where the money is coming from to fund the school districts, more than likely, if not next year, fairly soon, property taxes will be eliminated as the funding mechanism for school boards.
Can you imagine Act 1 going away?
Just saying.
Yeah. It'll.
That's the end of the report.
Hey, that very informative report. Thank you
Just
very
one quick
much.
question. I don't know if you know the answer, but so the House Bill 638, which says that candidates would no longer be able to cross-file, does that mean that they would have to choose a party, or are they removing party altogether?
No, they'd have to choose a party.
Your party.
Oh, it's so stupid. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's what
I don't think
every other
I
candidate.
don't think that
Running for any other
parties
office,
should
that's what
be
you
at
do.
all concerned with school board, personally. But okay.
There you have it. Okay, the Upper Bucks County Technical School, Mr. Akmanowitz.
All right, I got some quick notes here. I shouldn't be as lengthy as I usually am. Spare you all. Student of the Month, Bryce Schmel. He's from Penn Ridge. Received Quakertown, Upper Bucks Technical School received a donation of about $5,300 in total throughout the last monthly cycle. About $4,300 of it, I just want to make sure that I point out, was from Lewis Brothers Construction here in Quakertown. Thank you very much. Employee benefits in regards to the Upper Bucks Technical School staff is going to be changing to the Delaware Valley Insurance Trust, otherwise known as DIVIT. They will be exiting the association of they're currently in with Quakertown, as well as some of the other surrounding school districts. We adopted the hazing policy and bullying policy that we reviewed the prior month. We also approved a new updated calendar with the new makeup days, which we are sure to most likely update once again. And then last but not least, we received a $50,000 grant for, I believe it was for equipment, if I am not mistaken, and actually it is pretty notable that we were one of two tech schools that received the full $50,000 grant. That is my report, sir.
Thank you very much. That concludes the committee reports. President's report, nothing to add except this tooth is throbbing. It's a lot better than I feared it would be. Root canals have come a long way, apparently. I think we need to wait for Ms. Mitchell to return to move to the action items. Anyone out there have a root canal before? Yeah. they're kind of scary. Thinking about them's worse all week long, you know. I know Dr. Harner had a tooth pulled on Friday.
Thank you, sir, for sharing.
Well, no, I know you had a tooth pulled on Friday, and then you were like walking to schools an hour and a half later, and then having breakfast meeting, lunch meeting. But like, that's a West Point thing.
No, that's what us educators have to do.
I guess, man, I was impressed. Yeah, he's on the phone. He's like, hold on, he's pulling now.
It was after a root canal, sir, and a crown.
Thanks for the warning. Okay, so items for actions. Oh, this one's sad. The first item on the agenda is the retirement of our board secretary, Ms. Bishop. There we have I need a motion to accept the retirement of board secretary, Ms. Alice Bishop, effective June 30th.
So moved.
Mr. Anderson?
Second.
Mr. Jackson? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries unanimously. And then that brings us to the appointment of board secretary. If I got to put on my eyeglasses, I believe there she is right in front of me. I need a motion to approve the appointment of the new board secretary. The administration is recommending that the board appoint Ms. Anita Caseman. That would actually be, if I'm not mistaken, the mother of Ms. Caseman who spoke to us earlier. So is she going to go to medical school or neuroscience? Wow, impressive. To assume the responsibilities of the secretary. And I need a motion to approve the appointment of the board secretary, Ms. Caseman.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Who was that? Aye. That's Mr. Akmanovitz. Okay. All opposed? Any opposed? Okay. It carries unanimously. Any public comment on the fiscal items presented? Okay. The fiscal agenda has 3 items that will have a roll call vote for each item. Item A is to amend the resolution dated March 9th for the general obligation of the bond series that I mentioned from the Finance Committee. I need a motion to approve the amendment to the March 9th, 2017 resolution for the issuance of the general obligation bond series A of 2017 to expand the scope of the project finance to include other capital improvements to the school facilities of the district.
So moved.
Mr. Jackson and Ms. Mitchell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries unanimously. The second item is the Upper Bucks Technical School budget. I need a motion for the business services. Who's this motion?
A motion to approve the Upper Bucks Technical School
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries unanimously. I think, Mr. Jackson removed himself from, pulled himself from the Boucher James bills list. This is February 2018. I need a motion to approve the February 2018 Boucher and James bills list.
So moved.
Mr. Anderson? Mr. Kern, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstention.
Okay. Unanimously with 1 abstention. Okay, we have the fiscal consent agenda, including the 8 items listed, which includes the bills list, budget transfer, the treasurer's report, the Camp Knox-Mixon contract, the room reservation with Arts Quest and Steel Stacks for the senior prom, the license agreement with Panorama Education, the lease agreement with Richland Township and RASA. I need a motion to approve the fiscal consent agenda
Am I allowed
as
to
presented.
ask a question before?
Sure, absolutely.
I have a question about the RASA agreement.
Okay.
So we have who organized this? I guess Dr. Harner. I mean, who wrote this? Who was involved in negotiations? I'm just curious. Pardon me? The RASA negotiations and the contract that we're about to review.
Yes, sir.
And approve. Who was involved in those negotiations?
Mr. Schock was in the contract review. Mr. Harper was there to help build the relationship. What the RASA agreement is a windfall. It doesn't give us. We've already, as a board, had approved the project to build for our work in building the relationship is for us to provide or build the facility that was paid for by RASA and by the township. By doing that in-kind contribution, we get full access to that facility during the season, preseason season of that facility. So this is a windfall for us.
And I'm only concerned. I understood that actually, okay. but I read something about us giving them $2,500 a year for 10 years.
No, that's RASA pays the township $2,500. The district is no expense other than line paint for the softball team.
And do we have somebody internally that does that, or do we pay?
We do that.
We do that. Okay, thank you.
This is a windfall contract for us in that partnership.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the fiscal consent agenda items as presented.
I'll motion.
Ms. Mitchell?
And second.
Mr. Akmanowitz? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Carries unanimously. Public comment on the human resources items presented for a vote. Okay, the human resource consent agenda, 6 sessions, including unit pay, support staff, professional staff, conditional secretary staff, and where's confidential? Oh, confidential secretary staff. I need a motion to adopt the above resolution and approve the personnel items as recommended.
So moved.
Mr. Jackson, any second?
Voting on the agenda for.
It's all the human resources, including the furloughs. Includes the furloughs.
That's in there.
We're not voting on that tonight.
No, that's
yeah, that's everything.
I'll second it.
Okay. I was just.
Mr. Anderson. All in favor, say aye.
Discussion on that one.
Discussion.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
There's some sensitive stuff in here, so are we going to vote on these individually, or?
Well, you can pull out anything you want.
I think, with the furlough of the staff being on the table, that should be a separate discussion.
Absolutely. Okay. You want to pull that out?
Yes.
Okay. So on it, we have, it's going to be supervisory technology staff, unit pay, support staff. We're pulling E, professional staff.
You would pull just items 3 and 4 under item E.
Okay, items 3 and 4 under item E.
And 5.
And 5.
5. Sorry, next page.
Okay, that would be suspensions 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we're voting on the consent agenda minus those items. Okay.
Okay. Are you sure you don't want to include 6 as well, or no?
What's that?
You want to include 6 as well, or no?
Hiring, isn't it?
Yeah, that's hiring.
6 is someone who's being employed.
Those are hirings.
Okay, do I have a motion to, well, it was we pulled the items. Okay.
Do we have to officially amend the motion?
Well, we pulled the items, Mr. Gardner.
So you're just voting everything except those 3 items you just mentioned.
So all of them?
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the human resources consent agenda with those items pulled?
So moved.
Mr. Jackson.
I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Anderson. Okay, discussion.
Seems straightforward to me.
It's pretty straightforward. It's not pleasant. It's straightforward. It's been a year talking about it.
Wait, we're not talking about that
We
yet.
haven't said aye or nay yet.
Oh. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that part carries unanimously. Now discussion.
So now this discussion is going to be specific to the furloughs.
Furloughs.
For the teachers, right?
You need a motion and a second before you have discussion.
Okay.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
Has there been a motion?
No, I presume that you did. I apologize.
Okay, so now for point of order for the for your legal language, we go to the items E, sections 3, 4, and 5. We need a motion. Okay, we need a motion to adopt professional items E, 3, 4, and 5.
Unless you want to separate any of those individual items out either.
I suspect that they're all or none. Correct?
What, me?
So moved.
Okay, so that's Mr. Jackson.
I'll second that if you need it.
Second that. Okay, discussion.
I would advise the board you need 5 affirmative votes to approve E 3, 4, and 5.
Because of the absent members.
Pardon?
Because of the absent members.
Well, you need 5 votes anyway.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But a simple majority tonight doesn't do it, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay, just clear for everybody. Okay, now we have a proper discussion.
Dr. Harner, could you explain a little bit about the process wherein by regulation, I believe, have to put this out at this date, even though maybe you're able to avoid them?
To begin the conversation, I'd like to give a little history and how we got to where we're at today, and it began in the budget discussions last year. Ms. Edwards, would you pick that one up, please?
Okay, the furloughs that are resulting tonight go back to the 2-year plan in order to close the budget deficit, and that involved the closing of Milford Middle School last year. We did not have to furlough any staff members. As a result of that, we had enough retirements and resignations to do that by attrition. This year, with the vote to close to Hicken Valley, most of the savings come from the reduction in personnel, not from the building as a physical structure. So all of these positions that are being furloughed are already reflected in the budget. They've already been removed, and it is part of that budget gap closing process. At this point in time, or close to this point in time, we're required to give notice to people who may be furloughed. There are a number of things that could happen between now and August that would cause any of these individuals not to actually lose their job. So we could have additional retirements and resignations. The list is as short as it is because we already had some retirements and resignations. We could make a different decision about some of the individual positions when you get to the final budget. For example, if our revenues came in significantly more than we were anticipating when we get our May assessment data, then you might entertain a discussion about whether you want to furlough all of the positions or retain some of them. So those decisions are yet to be made. Your vote tonight allows the furlough of these individuals. If none of those things happen and we get to the end of the year and none of those things have happened, the positions have not been restored, or there aren't any vacancies for the people to go into, then the motion that you're voting on tonight is what authorizes us to furlough them. The last time we had to go through this was when we closed Haycock Elementary School, which was a number of years ago now. And in the end, we ended up furloughing 3 individuals. We were able to hire them all for long-term substitute positions, which while the salary was lower, it did preserve their employment and benefits and PSERS credit and all of those things. And then they were recalled. Everyone who's furloughed has a right to be recalled in inverse order. So the most senior person that's being furloughed gets recalled first. And we're not permitted to hire anyone in that certification area until we have recalled everybody on the recall list that wishes to come back. So there's a lot of factors that will influence how many of these people will actually lose a job or be offered long-term sub-employment between now and June. So your vote tonight just authorizes that to happen in the event that none of those circumstances come to fruition. Okay, does that help?
What would be the hit if we didn't furlough these folks and none of the magic miracles happened?
Well, we still have a $2 million gap. That was reported at the Finance Committee meeting, and the value of the positions that are being furloughed is somewhere between $600,000 or $700,000. Sorry, $796,000. So it's actually a little more than I thought. So that would increase the budget gap by almost $800,000.
That's what the savings, the proposed savings are going to be, you're saying, for the furloughed staff?
The budget we did tonight has this in it.
Yes, reflects the furlough of those staff, and the value of those positions is just under $800,000. So it would widen our budget gap by $800,000.
So my question about the long-term subs, is that even an option for, do we anticipate having that type of position available for those staff members?
I would say for most of the people, it's likely. Like if you're elementary certified, the likelihood that we're going to have a year-long leave or similar circumstance in elementary is high based on our past history. Would not be as certain for something like guidance or a nurse because there are many fewer of those positions, so the likelihood that someone will take a leave in that area, it's a much smaller pool of people. So I would say that's not as likely.
Didn't we offer at least one already? I mean, long-term subs, don't we have a couple of those positions already open?
Yeah, we have positions open and posted. We have not filled any long-term substitute positions for next year yet.
There is a place for these people.
Can't promise that there's a place for them, but I think the elementary certified people, it's likely, and the others not as much.
So I have a lot of questions, so bear with me. So one thing I was wanted to make clear was there was discussion about the teachers who were retiring that were not filling those positions. So how many does that make in total over the last 2 years, total positions that are eliminated, including those that were not filled after retirement?
I'm looking at it right now. So in fiscal year 2016 and 17, the actual number, according to the stuff online, was 309 teachers, 309.64 teachers, with 306 being full-time and 6 being part-time. So if you fast forward to the proposed budget changes, it goes down to 286.91.
He's looking at us.
Is that accurate?
I mean, this is the number, but this also says that we only have 4 school nurses, and I heard tonight we had 12. I'm not sure what the number is.
We have 4 certified school nurses, and which is just about what we're required to have by school code, and our other school nurses are registered nurse assistants and not certified school nurses.
So registered nurse assistants, are they registered nurses?
They are registered nurses, yes,
okay.
Sir.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So that's can we confirm that number is correct?
It's on the website.
I just want to make sure,
right?
Because I wasn't aware that included the number that we're not filling. You know what I'm saying? Like if the people that are retired.
I would imagine whoever populates this spreadsheet district staffing FTE count over 6 years, attachment F, is where we get the numbers from.
Yes. I do think the line item you're reading, though, is there's a number of positions that are professional staff positions that are broken out in individual line items. If you're looking at the spreadsheet I think you're looking at, so like reading specialists have a line, guidance counselors have a line, so that line at the bottom is everybody who doesn't fall into one of the categories that's broken out. It's not the, the total of the bargaining unit positions overall would go from 372 in 2013-14 and will be down to just under 341 in total professional positions. That includes all the different categories.
From 2013.
Yes, and the document with the 6-year change is posted in board docs tonight, I believe.
And how many students can we does anybody have that readily available? How many students from 2013 to 17?
I should do. So our current enrollment was 5,329. Projected next year is 5,221.
So you mean from 2013?
No, I'm sorry. The last year to this year.
Okay. Does somebody have enrollment numbers from 2013?
I can look it up.
So my question while you're looking that up is...
I have it right here for you.
Okay.
So 2013, actual total.
Yeah.
2013, 5,329.
Okay.
And if we're looking to next year, which is 2018-19, 5,221. So actually I went back 4 years on my numbers as well, so.
Okay. So someone mentioned earlier about averages when it comes to counselors, guidance counselors per school. So I would like to know if we have the numbers per school. That number did seem, the average I guess can be a little bit misleading. If you're talking about certain schools, do you have quite a bigger ratio? Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Joe got it right about the numbers in one building versus, for example, at the 6th grade center, we have approximately 423 students, and you have 2 counselors there. At Strayer, you have 831 students, and you have 3 counselors there. So if you get those numbers versus at the elementary level, they got different building sizes. You have a counselor at QE, and they have the fewest number of students. Where you go to POF, you have the most amount of students. So, and it's 1 counselor. Just be mindful. There was 1 counselor for every 2 buildings across the 6. We only 3 counselors at the elementary level 4 years ago. Now we have 6 counselors, 1 per building.
One of the things that came to mind, Mr. Santinelli also sparked it. How do we know when we have enough or not enough? Because I'm with you that I don't really care about the numbers per se, because what if you have all crazy awesome students that sit in this chair every board meeting? We probably need like 1 counselor per 1,500. But if you have all kinds of very, very challenging students, we need 1 per 20 students. So the numbers to me are fairly meaningless, but how do you know?
Well, it's also very difficult. If I could add on top of that, the complexity of the issues that we have that's been out in the newspapers recently, but the reality that we've been talking here and in retreats about the students that have need more assistance. We've hired a mental health professional at the high school who has a full dance card, busy the whole time she's here. What's the student load there? 15 students in, no, with a full schedule. We have other programs. We hired a behavioral specialist this past summer to to deal with a lot of that, so that we have a lot of other resources to go to a lot of these issues. So just having it by itself is a very difficult challenge, besides the fact that it varies 1 per 200 some students to 1 per 390 students to 1 per or 2 per 415 students.
One thing that I was thinking about when we were in our finance committee meeting was brought up the point that we have, higher ratio, but we also have a higher poverty ratio, and I feel like that's also something that we need to consider. Usually people in poverty have a greater need for things like a school counselor. I'm mainly concerned, I'm very concerned about all these furloughs, absolutely very concerned about them and the continued staff cuts within our district, and it's obvious that our community is as well. And, without feeling like, to your point earlier, Keith, that I'm not really sure what the long-term plan is. It feels like we're continuing to cut staff. Where does it end? And I know there's a lot of unknowns out there, but one thing I feel like we haven't really taken a look at is, and granted, I don't want to cut, and nobody wants to cut anything, we don't want to cut programs, but we have not really taken a look at individual programs and the efficiency and cost by program. So what I mean is, let's say you have a program that is extremely costly but only benefits a small number of students. I have not seen really any analysis as far as that's concerned. So if anyone can comment on that.
But if you cut a program, aren't you you're almost assured of cutting a staff as well? So you're saying instead of furloughing these teachers, we should cut a program and furlough another one?
No, not necessarily.
Virtually every special ed program is going to fall into that category.
I would love to put them in a place where we could have smaller class sizes, in another area where we might see a great, a number of students. I mean, I don't know all the answers. I just feel like at this point, I do have a lot of concerns about, growing class sizes. We are from a community standpoint, I'm sure it feels like we're spending. We're spending all this money on NIDIC. We're looking at other areas of spending, and we're hiring apparently another administrator, which I still don't understand the justification for that. And yet,
I remember this resolution, and with regards to the teachers, isn't a done deal. It's that we have 4 teachers on the list, and the possibility of alternatives, of retirements happening, of revenues increasing exist. It's 4 teachers, and we haven't been cutting staff. The administration has been repurposing and not replacing people already retiring. This has
31 staff members less than 2013.
We're on a really slippery slope, and I mentioned this in the finance committee, that this is simply kicking the can down the road. If you listen to when we talk about the Act 1 index, we haven't looked at going up and keeping teachers. We talked simply about furloughing teachers. We saw new numbers today, which we're not even sure what the actual numbers are. And if my calculations are correct, we're down about 8% in teachers in the last 3 or 4 years. Pretty soon, if you keep on this trajectory, I don't know that you'll have many teachers. You may have 1 to 200, and we can be like a college. So I think we have to really consider this moving forward. I don't think that this is an easy, I'm not in agreement with it. I think we need to go back to the drawing board. One thing that hasn't changed was our administration. I mean, there's still 24 out of 24 administrators. We have 2 less buildings, at least according to the numbers I looked at today. We increased this TOSA position. We're increasing TOSA positions, and yet we're eliminating other positions. So I don't feel real comfortable with with this the way it's presented tonight, and I think we need to go back to the drawing board and really hammer this out and be convinced that we have a long-term strategy to address the community as a whole. I know taxes are bearing on everybody. We hear about it. I understand that. I understand that. But we have kids whose lives are going to be affected by the decisions that we make. And by constantly closing schools, constantly eliminating teachers, we run the risk of destroying our long-term community if we're not serious about it.
Just to bring some other numbers to bear, we have declining enrollment of 137. Our proposed budget is an increase of $4.5 million. That's an 11.6% increase in per pupil cost. So there's two sides to that coin. I'd love to keep everybody.
And I don't disagree with that. And one of the things we talked about tonight in the finance committee is benchmarking. Let's see what other districts are doing versus what we're doing. I asked for where that data comes from. I couldn't find. I mean, I found a site.
Oh, like Scranton furloughed 51 teachers last month. You know, the
openpa.gov was the only thing I could find where it had some information that I thought was right.
Yeah, I would love to ask the teachers who spoke, and Ryan and Mr. Santinelli. As you were speaking, I mean, it's pretty hard to sit up here and not feel completely compassionate, right? And it's just like when Mrs. Kondracki, it's pretty hard not to be compassionate and empathetic. You know, we're stuck between a rock and a horrible hard place, and it's really hot sometimes. What is the solution? What do we do? Well, that's an easy scapegoat. How much do you think that costs per year? Maybe.
I mean, teachers,
I doubt
does that equate to how much money?
I bet it's not that at all. I'm pretty sure, Chris, it's not even remotely close. We don't do.
You also have to take into account the annual maintenance for the field, because that turf field needs to be replaced.
My point is, it's easy to say it's a $70 million high school renovation, which when I looked at it, I was like, wow, well, my school wasn't that nice. All these things they don't cost what they appear on the outside. $20 million NIDIG renovation that isn't $20 million. It's just like when you buy a car. Unless you bought it for cash, it ain't the cost of the car. It's
Edwards.
Your $300 lease or something like that.
Ms. Edwards, what's our deadline on this?
You have to decide at the next meeting, because if you don't choose to do it, then you can't furlough anyone and you pay all your faculty. So you'd have to choose to make a decision one way or the other at the next meeting at the latest.
I would like to add another fact bearing on the problem where Ms. Edwards talked about the savings of $800,000. We don't have all the classroom spaces for all these teachers, so Tehican Valley would have to remain open. And then you're putting back the administrative cuts that we don't have on the table this time. We took them already. We didn't replace Ms. Surge when she retired. We have a temporary person in there at the sixth grade center. So you're looking at about a $1.7 million versus an $800,000 number or whatever Tehican Valley was, because you're going to open up food services, custodial services, the secretary, the principal, and all that. So we're going to be adding on another administrator, and the administrator that I asked for in this, if you've heard a lot about the issues by bringing, we brought in last year because of moving the sixth grade, creating the sixth grade center. The freshmen moved up to the high school. We eliminated that assistant principal position and the TOSA that went along with it, teacher on special assignment. And if you don't have that, you need another person, like you have Miss Holly there that you had at Milford, who handles like a lot of low-level discipline and administrative things. So we have to put that back in the budget. You also have to put back in the Miss Surge that we took out, her placeholder in the budget.
Can we stop for a second, though?
So you're talking close to $2 million worth of needs.
Well, that's what the assumption, though, of you're talking about keeping the school open. I'm a little bit lost on there's 4 teachers, we'd have to keep a school open, you're saying, to find places for 4 teachers?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
And I think, go ahead.
I don't think that we would have classroom space to add sections, nor would it be feasible given the proposed class sizes necessarily, if you look at the class size chart for next year.
So we're furloughing because we're closing a building there's no space for them? I thought, if we had the money for you right now, would you be able to put them to work somewhere, doing something, teaching?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm just making sure I understand.
Without opening up a school.
Right.
For 4 people, right? I'm sure people would welcome a little crowding.
So,
just a reminder also, Mr. Wien asked a question during his presentation. He said, when is the board going to start admitting that it's our fault? Stop blaming Peasers or something else. Something like that. I want to remind everybody here that I am constantly, you may not believe it, but I'm constantly saying that where we find ourselves today is the board's fault. Not the 4 members who are new, I'll grant them that. The 5 of us who remain, plus the previous board members. Because Dr. Harner annually stands before us and asks us to grant him some exceptions in the budget so he can properly do what he is needed to do. And the previous board annually had said, no, sir, you will find the cuts necessary to whatever program or anything you can do to keep us at the Act 1 index. And last year he produced the decision to close 2 schools, furlough 37 teachers, cut a number of programs. And the 5 remaining board members, along with the previous ones, said, sounds like a good plan to us, do it. So I think while we often will say that Peasers is one of the driving forces that's increasing the budget annually, I do not believe it's adequate to say we deflect the situation where we are away from ourselves. There's been other items I do want to bring up, that the original proposal that we approved, that the full board, shouldn't say the full board, I believe Mr. Smith voted against it, but those who did approve the budget, approved a budget knowing that 37 teachers would be furloughed. Certainly it's not necessarily something to celebrate, but that number of 37 has dropped down to 7 that we have to contemplate. I know that I'm a very blunt person. I'm sure you can tell that. Certainly the members of the board know this to be the fact. Sometimes that offends, and I apologize to the union members present, but I'm going to be blunt and I'm going to offend. Several individuals stood up today and said that it's not necessarily the position. I mean, you're letting go of a nurse, you're letting go of an art teacher, you're letting go of a guidance counselor. It's not that you're cutting that position, it's that you're cutting that person. A lot of impassioned feelings were presented for the individual person being furloughed. In my mind, and again, I'm sure this is not your intent, but that comment in itself suggests that the person we're going to bring in to replace that person is somehow not qualified to do the same job. There'll be one guidance counselor for each school?
There'll be 2 at POF next year.
So there'll be at least one guidance. Were there 2 at Trum this year?
There was 1.
Will there be 1 at Trum next year?
Then with the increase, with the closure at Dagon Valley, they'll have 2 counselors at POF.
Will there be 1 at Trum? 1.
Yes, sir.
Were there 2 this year?
There's 1.
So there's 1 this year, there'll be 1 next year.
Yes.
So again, and I'm not criticizing the individual teacher. I'm sure she's a wonderful teacher. But to say that you need that teacher suggests that whoever we're bringing in is not qualified to do the same job she is doing. And I know you may not agree with that, but you're right, you don't know. That's exactly a very true statement. You don't know. But I know that when we were closing Milford Middle School, I heard from a lot of people who said that they were, very upset for this person or that person. And I'm sure there were a lot of people who left Milford who loved Mr. Sugar immensely and were sure that there would no way that anybody could do as good a job as Mr. Sugar. I highly doubt a lot of them are complaining about the job Mr. Santinello is doing today. And I'm not saying that these individual teachers are not the best for these individual students. I'm just stating that constant statement that we need that particular person suggests that you yourselves are questioning the ability of the replacement to fill that role.
So I think, I mean, what he's saying, I think what he's saying is that whoever's going to that position to take it, but yeah, exactly. I agree. So, I think we have to go back I mean, my recommendation would be, and I'm going to vote no tonight for it.
Okay.
Is going to be to relook at this at the financial committee.
Yeah, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I have a suggestion.
I was just talking.
I'd like to motion to table the vote.
Kayla and I were doing a side talk, and I think that Ms. Mitchell and Mr. McCucci and I guess Mr. Akmano was as well, right? And whoever else wants to would probably benefit from gathering more information directly from Ms. Edwards and Dr. Harner before the next meeting. The deadline for this vote to have your questions answered thoroughly, to look at everything so that you're comfortable to make the vote, because you haven't had enough time to look at it thoroughly and come to a decision that you can have a good conscience about.
Well, I guess
the vote for.
One question I have though is if we vote no tonight, if you don't have enough votes tonight, does that mean we vote again?
Yeah, it'll be brought up for
back until the deadline. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it would be very similar to tabling it. If
Right.
we wouldn't get
The
the
result
votes
will be
tonight.
the same, right?
So okay.
Yeah. So the thing is to gather more information so that you feel actually prepared. I think that'd be appropriate. So
I agree.
So the
So I need somebody to second my
yeah,
motion.
we have a motion
I
to
second
table
that.
it. Mr. McCucci seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The motion is tabled till the next meeting. In that time, whoever is looking for more information to feel prepared for that vote, please gather everything and be.
Please ask the questions.
Yeah, please ask the questions.
Spend the time
So is there
researching.
going to be in the interim another finance meeting where we'll, before the next vote?
Actually, there isn't, but Zach is very accessible, as is Dr. Harner and Ms. Edwards, as you know. And I would encourage you to ask every question.
We can do that.
Yeah, and
Well,
actually,
if I could, sir, Education Committee, what do we have? It's fine. We do it before the next board meeting.
Do an ad hoc meeting?
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't mind that.
Would that be on the 5th?
Is there an issue with the advertisement of that meeting, the time-wise?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Garten, is there?
The Education Committee is already advertised, isn't it?
Yes. To replace the.
Well, I would just
finance
make
committee
sure
one.
you provide appropriate notes. You're going to be discussing other issues besides just the educational curriculum, so the public knows.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
And I just want to say to the public, I encourage you guys to come to the finance. I really encourage people to look at the budget, look at the numbers, and speak out to us, reach out to us in a very constructive way. I know that the community that I talk to, feels passionate, and I ask them, "Have you looked at the budget?" And they haven't. And so, we're here to serve as part of community members. We're accessible. And so I encourage everybody to take a look at things. And if you have any suggestions, email them to us. Because I think we're stronger as a group than we are as individuals. So,
And in fairness, I don't think anyone here wants to furlough, obviously, staff. And the budget is challenging, I will admit, it is. So, we could use as many set eyes, suggestions as we possibly can, because at the end of the day, we're going to need to solve for this one way or another. We just hope that we can avoid that being staff.
Yeah, and it could be, taxes are real, and so they affect everybody. And so we have to be conscientious of that. And so I know there's folks in the community critical of us not putting our line in the sand against the Act or for the Act 1 index, or not going above it. I forget what the negative talk of how we voted that particular, made that motion or whatever. But we're really trying to do our due diligence. I really feel that the decisions that are made today will affect us not only this year in the short term, but in 1 or 2 or 3 years out. And so I'm pretty passionate that if the only way we're going to make the budget meet is by cutting people, every year we're going to be having the same discussion, and it's not something that I think is really what we should really be doing, is planning for 2, 3, and 4 years out. And so that's really what I challenge all of us to look at it.
Yeah.
And not just the here and now, but what's it going to look like in a 2 or 3 year time period.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, moving on to policies and program items. Any public comment on policies and program items presented for a vote? Okay. We have the policy and programs consent agenda, the exciting things Mr. Kern read about. I need a motion to approve the policies as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, hey, that brings us to information items. All right, information item, let's see, we have a board briefing book. Regular voting meeting, March 22nd, public information. A reminder that updates to the board briefing book are located under library tab, as well as information on the data and how to best view the board briefing book is on your laptop. Communications, items, none are listed. Board comment, any new business from the board members? Okay, public comment, last opportunity for general public comment. I see a lot of hands. Let's start right over here. I'm going to go clockwise. State your name and area residence, please.
I'm not actually a resident. My name is Kathleen Plesnarski. I'm the Assistant Director of Upper Bucks County Technical School. And I would just feel really horrible if I left and didn't thank you for approving our budget, and thank you for your continued support of career and technical education. So thank you.
Remind everybody about the Lunch with the Bunny.
Thank you, sir.
I forgot. Lunch with the Bunny. When's the makeup date for Lunch with the Bunny? 24th. The 24th is Lunch with the Bunny. Tech school, please. Breakfast. Thank you.
I have to tell you, personally, I'm a big fan of the students. I was actually at the fundraiser at the Upper Perk YMCA last week, and a lot of your students were there cooking up delicious things. But everywhere I go, I see talented young people ready to work. And so keep up the good work. Really proud of you. You do. You really do. Constantly. So thank you. Keep up the good work. Okay. Other comments? I saw hands back. Mr. Wien.
Ryan Wien, QCA president. I'm actually shocked, Mr. Jackson, that you didn't bring this up in the legislative update because you seem very passionate about this topic. But my own representative, Marsha Hahn from Northampton County, has proposed a bill, and as has Mario Scavello of Monroe County, Senate Bill 1048, and it's to eliminate schools to be the first choice for polling stations. In Nazareth, which is right down the road from my house, unfortunately there was an active shooter on Route 33 last year, and because the schools were being used as a polling station, they were not allowed to lock down the school. So that pushed at least Representative Hahn to put forward this bill. So there seems to be a lot of support from what I've read behind these bills. And I'm asking that you know, I actually personally reached out to Marsha Hahn and encourage her to keep pushing with this bill. I'm going to do the same with my members. I think it's something that maybe our district
I appreciate that
should reach out as well.
Just so you remember that I get my legislative report from the representative of the IU,
it was
so
not
that's
against
why
you. I'm just saying
I didn't see it on there, but I
yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiegand. Mr. Orloff.
I don't think anybody wants to furlough anybody, but the fact that you arrived at this position is indicative of the policies and the mismanagement of the past. I would also like to say that all the board members today, especially the newbies, have no responsibility relative to the policies of the past, including you gentlemen who've been here for 4 years. All this stuff was baked in the cake at that particular time, decades ago, especially during the Scanlon administration. The other thing is the district is at Rubicon. Dr. Harner's own numbers project the census in 2021 to go to 4,800, 4,900. So I don't see how you can say you're going to maintain the exact same staffing when you're going to lose 300 kids, almost a whole grade school, within
Aren't you up
the
here
next 4
saying
years.
you thought that that was going to increase not that long ago?
What's that? Me? Never.
Because of the homes in Richland Township, I do recall.
You did say the tax base was going to increase.
Correct. Yeah. Okay.
No, I said I asked them if the tax. I remember. I asked if the tax base was going to increase if they factor anything out. We do have some age-qualified homes going in. Age-qualified homes don't have school-age kids. We have a couple developments that have now are available to pull permits, but they're not pulling that many permits. The commercial base has increased a little bit along 309. Most people have noticed it, but we are losing people across. In fact, it's not just the Quakertown area; it's a Bucks County and Pennsylvania area. We're going to lose at least one congressman. And if your own demography shows that you're going down to 4,900 kids, you're losing 300 kids. That's a projection that's kind of baked into the cake. So we've gone from 5,600 down to 4,800, 800 kids. So I don't see how you can maintain the same exact staffing when you're. What's that? No, but I mean, even going forward.
No, I don't disagree with you.
Oh, okay.
I think a long-term strategy has to be to figure out
Correct.
and match these two things up. But we're also we're losing. Not only are we furloughing, but we're not replacing. How many teachers are we not replacing?
We've been attriting staff all along. I get, yeah.
Each year, when people are retiring, we're not filling those positions.
You raised a very good point earlier too. That if there are 25 or 4 people in administration, they haven't taken a single cut. I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't know. It's the numbers on here.
Okay, I no doubt the reason to doubt you. There's a whole lot of new technology that's going on there. Like you can outsource payroll, you can outsource payables. A lot of transactional work is going outside because they can do it a lot more efficiently than having one-man departments. That those kinds of things happen. So there are. So I would suggest maybe you spend a few bucks, and not me, by the way, and hire somebody to do a performance audit of the district. Look at some of their processes, work processes. There might be some opportunity in that regard. Finally, prior to 2000, I guess it was 14 or 15, I would say this area was a cell. When the old board, including these gentlemen here, was elected, I thought it was a hold. I think right now, if you don't get a hold of this Act 1, if you don't limit the spending, this community is a cell. I mean, I'm talking to people, 4 people in particular, they're looking to getting out. My mother lives in Middletown, Delaware. Her house is worth $300,000. She pays $1,500 for the first time in her property taxes. My house is worth low twos. I'm paying over $4,000. So it's just, the point is, if I live 20 more years and I go down to some of, I'm looking at maybe a $60,000 savings in taxes. That's assuming where it's at now. So you guys got some pretty hard lifting if you want to get this community back to being a buy. And right now it's not a buy.
We're working on that.
Thank you.
The one thing I have yet to understand is why people are so proud of staying under Act 1. It's like you're still raising taxes. Be proud if you didn't raise taxes at all.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this whole notion of staying in Act 1 to me is silly, because for the average person, the difference between, not to say that I'm for this, I'm just saying the difference between 2.8 and 4.2 is like $50 for most people a year. So be, yeah, but be proud if you don't be proud to say I raised taxes, but it's only 2.8 and not 4.2. Give me a doggone break. I mean,
if the difference between 4.2 and 2.8 is so minimal, why did you not support the resolution to maintain below Act 1?
I will say again, as I said before, the reason I wanted to do so is because I didn't want to leave any option. I didn't want to take any of my options off of the table. I feel like that's silly to do that without having all the information.
Actually, in my view, the Act 1 terminology is in the vocabulary of the.
It's political theater.
I know, but in the vocabulary of the tax mark, and the taxpayer, it's a benchmark. If the Act 1 were 4.2. That would be the Act 1, and so the thing is that all around the state, what happens is you have this Act 1 number that's given to a district, and it actually varies a little bit from district to district based on their resources. And so if you are at Act 1, you're par. If you're under Act 1, you're heroic. If you're over Act 1, you got a hole in your pocket. And so that the number becomes more of an optic that you are held under public scrutiny for. And that I really think that it's a vocabulary thing for the taxpayer, because it's a number they can go to. I think if the Act 1 was 1.8, let's say Act 1 was 0.5% and you went over Act 1, people would be mad. If Act 1 was 6.2%.
Have we trained them, though, to be
I don't know how it came to be. I've been doing this for 2.5 years. I don't know how it came to be, but I walked into this world of Act 1 that I never knew. So
Act 1 was passed to try to limit spending.
Yeah, I understand, but
there's a reason why for Act 1.
I understand that, but why the number 2.8 or 4.2 or 3.1 or 1.6 is important, and the nominal value of it versus the esoteric value is I guess where people get their hackles up. It's just become this line in the sand where the optics of the taxpayers who pay attention get their ire up, and apparently if you stay within Act 1, then you have appeased the tax base.
So I have a recommendation. We don't use the term Act 1. We don't even use percentages. We actually use real money out of real people's pocket. That describes what's the average homeowner in Quakertown going to have to pay.
I'm fine with that.
If we pass a 4.2 versus a 2.8, because that's the only thing that counts. And the beauty about obfuscation that the government's really good at is to make it so that nobody knows what the H we're doing, because we're using all these dopey terms that mean nothing to anybody, and we hardly even know what they are.
The irony
and the
is
point behind Mr. Orloff is Act 1, to my knowledge, was to stop the insane raising of tax, like what we have here under Scanlon or whoever that you're vilifying. 14%, we had some crazy, Mr. Jackson would know, right? A 14%. I mean, it's great when the money's flowing, everybody's happy.
I thought it was 14.4.
Right, everybody loves it when the town's booming, people are moving in, we're getting all kinds of money, we're spending it like drunken sailors. We, not us, but right. I mean, that's all happy. But boy, as soon as that spigot stops and we have to have real conversations, oh my gosh, all hell breaks loose. So, I mean, this is the real world, and I think we need to stop using stupid terms and use real numbers.
I agree with you 100%, and we have to have real conversation on it. And
Yes.
Okay.
I like it.
So, dates for board members. Okay. Yes. Oh, no. Another public comment.
Very, very brief.
Rats, I was trying to snake out of here.
Very, very brief. QCA would like to thank Alice Bishop for her service, so thank you.
Oh, yeah. You're not done yet. Tell you, we'll be thanking Alice all spring. We have, we've the whole season still. So, all right. So, calendar items. My thing you gave me, it says dates for, and then it says nothing. Oh, there we go. Thursday, April 5th, facilities committee meeting, community room A. Thursday, April 12th, education curriculum meeting, now amended to be adjunct finance committee meeting, 7 p.m. work session, regular meeting right here. Monday, April 23rd, policy committee meeting at 5:45.
I'm sorry, that's the board retreat.
Oh, that's a board retreat. Oh, okay, board retreat. That's going to be here. Is there food? Mm-hmm. Okay, food. Okay, and then, all right, then April 26th, Thursday, Finance Committee here, and then the regular voting meeting. That brings us to everyone's favorite part of this evening. Do I have a motion for adjournment? Okay, Mr. Anderson, second. All in favor? Aye. There we go. Opposed? I didn't think so. Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming out.